Hello and welcome to the Pink Hair Girl podcast. My name is Sally Jane. It's Monday the 1st of December and this is kind of what I'm calling episode 17B because I recorded this first segment and somehow it didn't record. But it was all about the book, so I thought it actually did better sort of a kind of a segment on its own. So I wanted to share with you about my book. It was printed in America by Create Space, which is Amazon's self-printing, self-publishing division. And I had looked at lots of options, and some of the quotes, especially that I got here in South Africa, very expensive. It would have worked out something like 500 Rand or $50 to print one book. And at that price, not even I'm buying my book. So, I eventually managed to find, because I wanted to print landscape, that's quite difficult to find a place to print landscape, apparently. When I started out with this book, I never really realized it would be such a challenge to find a way to print it landscape. But the photos lent themselves to being landscape. I mean, working with Andre and with the photography, the photos are just so beautiful. You really want to be able to use that and to get the full value of what the photos look like. So last week I ordered some books to England, to my sister, and some to me, and the proof copy, before I even sort of pressed the print button on all of these, actually went to Laura from Ink Whale Designs, who did the layout for the book, and she showed me what it looked like, checked the margins, checked that everything fitted in and all the rest. And because it would have taken too long for the proof to come to South Africa. So I never actually saw the proofs. The first time I got the book, I'd seen other people on Instagram and various places that already got their book, and I still hadn't actually held the book in my hand yet. So last week when the box arrived, it was kind of squealing like a kid at Christmas. Rachel did tell me to calm down, it was only a book. But 2.5 years of work, sort of culminating and actually being able to hold your own book is quite exciting. And I have an ISBN number. That makes it real. That makes it like that you really have your own book. You published your book now. It's a bit silly, but I mean, I just wanted to hold my own book. But and so I'm glad if other people enjoy it too. So this is the book, Mzansi, South Africa on My Needles, and Mzansi means the south in Zulu and Xhosa, and that is in the southern part of South Africa. So the book, ideally, it would have been nice to have the binding on the side, but to try and find somebody that will bind a landscape book like that is very difficult, because apparently if you put the glue on this side and then you have the weight of the book this way, the pages tend to pull out of the binding because they're longer than the binding. So the only other way would have been to have a book that was about that size, just that, and then they would bind it, but then this isn't so long. Then I thought you lost quite a lot of the book like that. So Amazon's Create Space allows you to rotate your pages, and then they bind it along the long side, and then what you get in essence is this sort of calendar effect, where it opens this way. So let me show you through the book quickly. It starts with a dedication to my mom, who taught me to knit. And then there is a map. I've done a map of South Africa with all the numbers around it, so that you can see where, sort of reference where all the different patterns come from, because not all of you are going to know when I talk about Cape Town where that is in relation to Pretoria and Joburg and the Drakensberg and things like that. So we did that, and then this is just the contributors and a picture. This is the index, with a kind of a picture index as well. And then the book starts with Cape Point. And I highly recommend that you go and watch the episode about Cape Point, which I think is called something about I Knit While Andre Drives Fast, which is an introduction to the photographer as well. They took the pictures, and we actually go to Cape Point, and it features we sit on this bench, which looks out across the whole point here, and it's really beautiful, and there's a panorama of the whole point. So go and look at that podcast episode, and you'll see all the sort of beauty around that Cape Point area. And let's just find the picture that inspired the sort of colors for Cape Point. Yeah. If you see this here where the point goes out, you can see there's the kind of the deep dark water, and then there's a kind of a blue, turquoisey, teal blue, and then the breakers of the waves, and then it goes into this sort of land mass brown green color, and then the sky. And then you'll see in the project that I've kind of tried to reflect that in the knitting. So this is the Cape Point cowl, which is just a very simple tube cowl. And then it starts at the bottom, the darker water, moves up to the more teal color, the white for the breakwater, and then the land mass, and then this is up to the sky, and then it repeats the other way. And you could do a half size as well. Rachel's got a little half size one, and then this is the full size one. So that's the color inspiration behind the Cape Point. And then there was a hat and some fingerless mittens as well. There's Caleb and I, and the fingerless mittens and hat. And then there's a shawl, a Cape Point shawl, which uses each of the colors from the edge and then on the lace section as well. So this is the Cape Point shawl. Let me try and show it. It's a crescent shaped shawl. And then in the body is each of, oh, it's a bit hard to hold like this. In the body is each of the colors. There's a stripe for each of the colors, and then these are picked up in the lace section on the bottom. And I did the same chevron, except this time I used yarn overs, a sort of a lacier look than the other decreases or increases, should I say. So that's the Cape Point shawl. So that was the Cape Point set, and yeah, that was kind of the start. I think that was kind of the starting point of the book. You know, was the Cape Point set, and having been to Cape Point with Andre. The next one was, of course, in Table Mountain. You can't. Such is that in focus there? Don't think that's focusing. It's just. There we go. Is that better? You can't really do South Africa or Cape Town or whatever without doing Table Mountain. And so for Table Mountain, I actually chose to base the colors on the King Protea, which grows on the mountain. And these are just Andre's pictures. You can see here with the cloud. The table, it's called the tablecloth because it's, you know, Table Mountain. When the cloud comes over like that, it's called the tablecloth over Table Mountain. And then this is just from my side of Cape Town, looking across. We look across the bay to Table Mountain from this side, and you'll see there's so this is sort of from Blouberg Beach, which is near me, and then looking across the bay here, and then Table Mountain is obviously there in the background. And I climbed Table Mountain quite a bit as a kid, and so yeah. And then the next pattern in the book is called volstruis, and a volstruis is a ostrich in Afrikaans. And the ostrich is one of the, you know, kind of an odd bird, isn't it? It's sort of my salute to African animals. I didn't pick one of the normal ones, really. I kind of went for something a bit different. And I used a kind of a feather and fan type of stitch to look like the ostrich plume. And just, you know, I kind of sometimes wish that I lived in the day and age where you could wear big feather boas and where, you know, you could go to flappers parties in the 20s or whatever, you know, when the ostrich industry was at its sort of the height of everything in the ostrich industry. Anyway, so this is just me on an ostrich farm. And this is the volstruis cowl. The cowl is written that you can actually do quite a lot with it. It's written for sort of 4 different ways. The one is that you literally cast on, provisional cast on, knit the entire long thing, and then Kitchener stitch it closed, and that's, you know, done. First option done. The second way that you can use the cowl, the way it is written, because I actually saw a scarf in a shop somewhere that had 2 different types of fabric used in it, and I really thought it was such an interesting textural difference, you know, between the 2. So what I combined in this one was making the ostrich plume stitch here. Don't know if in the grey, if it's going to focus on that. So that's the one side, and then you actually line the inside with a really soft fabric so that the two, so you don't have a wrong side essentially, so you don't see the sort of inside of the knitting. And then I'm sure I've worn it on the podcast before actually. And then when you wear the cowl, it just creates a real interest, in that the reverse side actually has fabric to it and is quite interesting. So that's the full strays. The other way that you can do it is to knit the ostrich plume and then insert, so you do the provisional cast on again, and then you knit the ostrich plume stitch, and then the other side, almost like a sock, the other side you knit in stocking stitch so that it's flat, so that you create this textural difference, but you do this with knitting. So this side is actually stocking stitch, and then when you wear the scarf, you also get the difference between the lace part and the plain part, and that's again knitted in a tube all the way around, and then those two ends are Kitchener stitched together. So you can knit it flat, and add fabric. You can knit it and add the stocking stitch on this part, and the other way is in the round, in the tube, is to knit the ostrich stitch the whole way around. So your whole circular tube would be ostrich stitch, and then you would graft the two ends together, and that would make also again no wrong side. So those are the options for the full strays cowl. So that was just a bit of an interesting salute to a rather interesting African animal. They are hilarious. And there you can see there are two of them, and you can see this pink one here has the plain stocking stitch on the inside there, and then the grey one is the one I'm wearing at the moment. So yeah, that's and everything comes with charts and everything else. And then the next one is the woodland cardigan, which was inspired by some yarn that Carlette from Nurturing Fibers designed, and is a kind of a salute to the fact that South Africa is quite a diverse landscape, and that people don't always think of, we've got tropical areas, we've got forest areas, we've got desert, we've got sort of high veld up here where I am. The west coast has fynbos. It's a very, very varied vegetation, and so there are big forest areas around here. And I remember sort of playing in the forest as a child, and there's that kind of magicalness of forests, like you almost expect to see little fairies and gnomes. There's Rachel with her little fairies there. Forests are really sort of magical places, like sort of places of imagination and stuff. So the little forest cardigan is sort of, there's Rachel in the forest, and there's a really sweet little baby there, who may or may not belong to one of my designer friends in Edinburgh. And yeah, so that was the forest cardigan. It's supposed to look, the hood is supposed to be pointed at the back, because it's a bit like a pixie, it's supposed to look a bit like a pixie hood, and it comes around your face like this, and it's got a little hidden pocket you can do to slip a little gnome or a little friend in it. And then the next area I did was the Drakensberg. The Drakensberg is a huge mountain range here in South Africa, and this here is actually called the amphitheater, because it kind of looks like it goes around in an amphitheater here. And the Drakensberg literally means the dragon mountain, because it looks almost like the back of a dragon, dragon's back. The whole mountain range forms that sort of big shape from the sky. And so I used the dragon stitch that I used in my Winter's Coming pattern, and created a hat with a brim is the dragon stitch. And then up onto the top of the hat there's a little flower, and this little flower is found growing on the Drakensberg mountain. I suppose it's a little bit like an erica, or a bit like those sort of snowdrops and those kind of things that you get on the mountains. So you'll see it's got a little flower on it, whether that you can put it on or not, it's just embroidered afterwards. And so that's the Drakensberg. That's probably a better picture of the little, you can see the dragon stitch here, and then the little flower. And then there was a little mud cozy that went with it. I think probably the better picture was the one that you saw. He's sort of drinking there. So that's the Drakensberg patterns. And then the next one was Johannesburg. It's a good skyline. And I think I showed this a bit in podcast 17 when I was talking about the yarn that you can win as part of the knit along. And so the yarn is called Foundry, and it's really about the precious metals and the mining and things like that in Joburg. But you can see it really matches the skyline pretty well too. You know, the kind of the different earthy colors and buildings and grays and browns and stuff that you get in the city centre in Joburg. And these were guest designed by Claire Devine. And they're such interesting socks. I've actually knitted them for the Geek. I mean, you can see down here on the toe, this sort of slip stitch pattern comes all the way down the toe, and it ends at different levels to kind of look like the different buildings, the different sort of skyscraper buildings. You know, it's fascinating. I really enjoyed that pattern. Good play of texture and ribbing and slip stitches and all the rest to sort of really create a skyline and the long lines that you get in a sort of a big city skyline. And you can see there a bit the slip stitches and the so that was the socks designed by Claire. I haven't designed socks yet, and it wasn't a kind of a leap I felt comfortable making yet. And then the jacaranda shawl I've shown you all before when I was in Pretoria. You know, this is what the streets look like, just lined with jacarandas like this. And you can see even this one is a sort of a view of the whole city here. You can see all the jacarandas in it. And I've shown you the jacaranda shawl before, which is a very big lace shawl with a simple lace repeat on the edge to look kind of like little dropping jacaranda flowers. So you can just see the shawl there. Sorry, I'm trying to give you a feel, kind of a look through the book, see what it looks like. And then my African fingerless mittens is a sort of a salute to beading and crafting and you know, that whole part of South African culture and the ladies that do those sorts of things. It's sort of my interpretation of various beading. And then each one is named after, my sisters and I each have an African name, because when we were growing up, my parents worked out in a rural hospital, and the nurses gave each of my sisters and I an African name. So you will see that the first one here, I'll show you where it sits here. So Mapula is my African name, and it means rain. I'm born in May, and up in that part of the country in May they get a lot of rain, and rain is a blessing. Rain in Africa is seen as a blessing. If it rains on your wedding, it's supposed to be very fortuitous. And then there is the Tandi, which is my older sister, and Tandi means love, and also, you know, it's a sort of a blessing, you know, blessed child, and a you know, love. And then my younger sister's name is Chape, which means another one, for another girl, because we were 3 girls, and I did a little girl on that one, because that one meant, you know, another girl. I did them in yellow, and you know, sort of like this little beaded. Sometimes these are used as it's called African love letters, and different colors mean different things. And then I put the little girl on the gloves over there. And then lastly, we end up at the top of the country. So the patterns have worked their way around. The Cape Town ones, the Ostrich and the Cape Point and Table Mountain are here in Cape Town, and the forests are over here. And then this would be up to the Drakensberg there, and then Johannesburg and Pretoria, and the beaded ones just over here on the border between Gauteng, which is this province here, and Mpumalanga, which is the province just next door, and then right up here into Polokwane, which is where Shiny Bees actually lived for a while, and up to the baobab trees right up at the top there. So that's the last one, is the baobab. And it's sometimes known as the upside down tree, because it looks like its roots, or, you know, it looks like it's growing upside down almost, you know, its roots growing up into the air. And these are old trees. I mean, you stand around these trees and you get a sense of time almost around. They have stood there for a long. I mean, some of these trees can be as old as 5,000 years old. They are really, really old trees. And because when I went to visit up to the top part of South Africa and then just into Botswana and the salt pans and stuff, and we went to see the baobab trees, we actually found a nest of baby owlets in the trees, and that's why there's little owls on the baobab pullover. You'll see there's one little owl that sits in the middle here, and then round the sleeves there were little owls there. And this is a sort of a tree cable but made much fatter and wider, so the branches go out sort of more like those what looks like roots almost going up into the sky. And there's one of my little niece and nephew where she's wearing the and then pull over and he's giving her a kiss or whispering in her ear. I'm not sure. It's quite sweet. And that is my South Africa book. So I thought I'd just do this little insert to show you a bit what the book is about. And it is really, it gives you, it's a really nice view to be able to see the patterns and to you know, get the full effect of the landscape pictures. I mean, I think the ebook is great, and I think it's a fantastic way to sort of get books without having to worry about postage, and I know lots of us are trying to declutter and have less stuff, but you know, to be able to see the landscape and in the book is really nice. So I hope that kind of gives you a little view into what the book looks like, and that those of you that are getting yours soon really enjoy them. See you next time. Bye.